Your 20s are financially dangerous, not because you're broke, but because small decisions here compound for decades. Most people don't actually fall behind because they don't make enough money. They fall behind because they never hit a few basic milestones early on. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 6 financial milestones that actually matter in your 20s. Nothing crazy, nothing unrealistic, just a clear framework that you can measure yourself against. And if you stick around until the end, the last one is arguably the most debated, but also the one that I think quietly changes how you think about money long term. Now, milestone 1, control your cash flow. By far, the most important thing you can do in your 20s is to get a control of your cash flow. Not what investing you're doing, not picking up a side hustle, not picking stocks, cash flow. A simple baseline rule to follow is the 50-30-20 rule. If you haven't heard of it before, it's a budgeting system where 50% of your money goes towards needs and bills, 30% towards wants and lifestyle, and then 20% towards savings and investing. It's not a perfect rule. I would argue to increase your savings as much as possible, but it's a starting point. The real goal with this milestone is awareness to what's going on. If you don't know where your money's going, you can improve it, and there are a ton of ways to do this. There's different apps, you can use Excel spreadsheets, or even the envelope system with cash. The method doesn't matter. What matters is that you're tracking your money, managing your expenses, and creating space to save. Personally, this was a thing I ignored in my 20s and it made everything else harder. And if you're not doing this yet, this is where you want to start. Milestone 2 is building your cash reserves, a real emergency fund. Not investment money, not dry powder. Life happens money is what I like to call it. Cash protects you from a job loss, car repairs, medical bills, and using debt when something goes wrong. Now, the rule I'm sure you've heard before, and I've even said on this channel before, is a good target is 3 to 6 months of expenses in cash reserves. And why is this, you might ask? Well, job searches take longer than people expect. Even when you get an offer, it can be months before you start, and cash buys you time, and time is leverage. Car repairs are through the roof, medical bills are through the roof, and money that you can have stored up ready to use for those types of things will keep you from using debt in those scenarios, and you'll be using cash that you have saved. Milestone 3, reach a net worth of 0. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but most people in their 20s start with a negative net worth because of student loans, car loans, credit cards, and very little money saved. Getting to a net worth of 0 doesn't sound exciting, but it's a huge turning point. When your assets finally equal your debts, every dollar starts working for you instead of against you. From that point on, savings actually builds wealth, investing starts to compound, and paying down debt moves you even further forward in your net worth journey. If you can hit this by your mid to late 20s, you're setting yourself up well. Now, let's take a second and pause real quick and reset this. So far, if you're at these 3 milestones, you have control of your cash flow, you have cash to protect yourself against life events happening, and you're no longer digging yourself out of a hole. None of this is super exciting, but this is the foundation in your 20s to build for the future. Everything else after this only works because of these steps. Now, let's talk about milestones that actually accelerate things and compound your net worth. Milestone 4, get to a $75,000 a year income. The average individual income in the US is around $60,000 to $65,000 a year. And if you can work your way to roughly $75,000, that's when I personally think something changes. You get breathing room. At that income, saving 15% of your gross income is $11,250 per year. And if you do that consistently and invest long term, you actually give compounding time to do its thing. And 75,000 isn't a magic number, but for most places in the US outside of major cities, it gives you enough to cover bills, enjoy life, and still invest meaningfully. In fact, if you invest at $11,250 per year from 25 to 65 with an average 8% rate of return, you would have roughly $3.2 million in retirement. Personally, I got here faster by job hopping early. Wasn't super comfortable, but it helped me get a 25% pay increase. You can get there by building skills, negotiating, getting more certifications or going to graduate school, and just simply being intentional about your career. Milestone 5. Have invested 1 times your income by 30. This is a very common benchmark. If you make $75,000 a year, that would mean that you would have roughly $75,000 a year invested into retirement accounts. This isn't a harsh rule, it's a measuring stick. Markets move, returns vary, and that can definitely impact this milestone, but as long as you're close and you're investing regularly, you're doing well. At this point, compounding stops being theoretical. You can actually feel it working, and you know that you're on your way to your retirement goals. So, before this last milestone I'm about to get into, at this point, if you have all 5 of these milestones hit, that would mean that your cash flow is controlled, you have an emergency fund to protect you, your net worth is no longer negative, your income is above average, and your investments are actually meaningful, and you're on track. If you're here, you are ahead of not only most people your age, but just most people in the US. So, milestone 6, owning a home. And this one is definitely controversial. Home ownership is not for everyone. There's a ton of videos explaining why renting makes sense. Housing prices have been through the roof for the past few years. It is not as easy. In fact, it is harder than it's ever been to get into a home. I'm still renting myself with the goal of getting into a house this year. I do think, though, that owning a home can be a powerful milestone in your 20s if it fits your situation. It's an appreciating asset over time. A fixed rate mortgage stabilizes your housing costs, and you're building equity instead of paying rising rent that increases every year. And the last reason, honestly, is a bit more philosophical. But when you own something, when you own a big, large asset like a house, you think long term. You take more pride in your financial situation, in where you live, and you put down roots. And I don't think that is ever a bad thing. So, in closing, if you are in your mid to late 20s and you haven't hit all of these, you're doing fine. Progress is what matters more than when you started. And if you have hit these milestones already, keep going. Your 20s are not about perfection, they're about setting up the next 40 years. As always, I appreciate your time. Thanks for watching this video.